Thanks, Angela. Hi, folks. How you all doing? Welcome along to this evening's First Music Contact Regional Development Plan panel discussion. At 6 o'clock, we will be joined by Monica and we're from the Leash Arts office to basically talk about funding available from their office and also to kind of do some kind of structure talking about what else we can offer. Right now, though, we're joined by these three fine gentlemen to talk about publishing for the next 40 minutes or so. As with the last couple of nights, any questions you have, you can just stick them in the chat field and we get to them at the end. And basically, what we're going to do is we're just going to talk a bit about publishing and a bit about kind of like what they do at their various offices, what they're looking for in terms of new acts, and like what how they sell themselves to the acts. So, Steve, I'm going to ask you to start by just introducing yourself, saying hello, and tell us a little bit about yourself. The LinkedIn question.
Okay. Hi, my name's Steve Farris. I've been a publisher for over 20 years of my career. I started off at EMI Publishing as an A&R assistant and then got a job as a scout and then eventually an A&R manager at Sony. Whilst at my time at Sony, I signed Bell and Sebastian and Snow Patrol. Subsequently to that, I've worked mainly much more in the independent sector. And I set up a publishing company for a band called The Levelers and acquired rights back and set up a sub-publishing deal, an admin deal with those guys. And then I reunited with the guys from Snow Patrol, and we set up a publishing company called Polar Patrol. And whilst we were there, we signed artists like Nadine Shah, Here We Go Magic, Bo Bruce, Johnny McDade, who co-wrote lots of hits with Ed Sheeran, Tired Pony. I like the we did very well with ourselves there. That came to an end. I worked at a publishing company that I set up at 13 Artists, a big booking agency who book acts like Arctic Monkeys and Radiohead. And whilst I was there, I signed a band called Built from Essex, who were just on their third album, and another band from Perth in Australia called the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. So I've managed to pull the rabbit out the hat every few years with a successful signing as an A&R person. Um, I've reached this point in my life now where I'm a consultant, and I've been a consultant for the last 6 years, working for myself. I've very recently set up my own publishing entity called Schedule A Music, and I also consult for a publishing startup with my old mate Johnny from Snow Patrol, which is called Magic Mountain Songs. So after having a little bit of a break for a few years as a consultant, I'm very much sort of back in the game.
Back to the game, excellent. So that's very good. That. Thank you very much for joining as well, Steve. I mean, it's interesting because you've got a real kind of width of experiences there, all the way from traditional publishing companies, setting up publishing companies with artists, right through
Yeah,
to kind of current day as well. So we really appreciate you joining us tonight.
thank you.
JJ, hello, welcome on board. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work and what you do.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm JJ. I mean, my credits aren't nearly as impressive as Steve's. I've probably been in the publishing game just under 2 years now. I work at Sony Music Publishing. Before that, I worked at PMR and a couple of other small labels. But yeah, I've been publishing for the last 2 years now. I'm an A&R coordinator, which means I'm a step below a manager. So I work across the roster that we already have signed. We've got, a roster of almost 450 writers at one time that need creative servicing. So I look after Sarah Gabrielli's roster, who's the head of A&R at Sony Publishing, and then Felix Canetti Clark, who is the VP of UK A&R and Strategy. So combined, I'm across about 70 writers in total. And my job is to make sure that we, yeah, service them however we can. That, crosses over in sessions, international writing trips, camps, essentially anything that they might need to help produce the amazing music that they do. That's where, that's my job, that's my remit. And yeah, it's an amazing place to work. And we have access to some of the most exciting new artists, and also access to some of the more developmental upcoming artists. And I'm starting to dip my toes more into that now. So, going through the process of, sending out offers and yeah, working on how you can help actually develop artists from a publishing perspective and help, like I said, empower them to make fantastic music.
Right. All those kind of like being 70 or so artists or writers you're talking about, are most of them new or some of them established or like, or like what's the split there?
I mean, it really varies. I mean, from manager to manager, it completely depends at who you are as a person. So Sarah Gabrielli, she's more of an alternative artist kind of manager. So she's got a lot of artists on her roster. So, you know, it ranges from Charlie XCX to Artemis to Thomas Heden, Kamal, and Temper Trap. You know, it's really varied. And then Felix is more of a mix of, you know, top liners. We've got producers, definitely some more established people on his roster. So all in all, there is a huge variety, which means that obviously there's different people needing different servicings, you know, at different stages of their career. So you're definitely learning on the job how to juggle expectations from person to person. But yeah, there's not really a specific, you know, level that exists in the active roster. We also have catalog at Sony Music Publishing, which is, you know, certainly more legacy acts. But yeah, for the most part, it's very varied.
Okay, excellent. Well, listen, we appreciate you joining us this evening as well, JJ.
Thank you for having me.
Joel, welcome on board. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hi, my name is Joel. I work for Centric Music Publishing, which is based out of here in Liverpool. Slightly different to these guys. I work in the world of publishing administration, which I'm sure we'll sort of jump into a little bit. I've been here for about 6 years now within the role of a client lead now. So I very much work across the entirety of the Centric roster here. The joy of that and the way that sort of Centric functions is that we work with people who have just written their first songs to people who have had #1 hits across the world, and making sure that what they're getting from us, similar to what JJ said and from Steve, is everything that we can possibly do for them as a publishing administrator, which is the world of making sure that original compositions and songwriters are getting everything that they are due for anywhere that they're played across the world. I mean, working at Centric was my first job, like professional job, I guess, working within music. I am from the Midlands, originally here in the UK, went to uni in Birmingham, but did a philosophy degree. I had 9 contact hours a week. So within that, I decided to set up a label, made no money, worked on the door, made no money, did some promotions in the city, made no money. So did that basically on my student loan, and then moved up to Birkenhead, worked in a coffee shop, did similar things up here in the Northwest as well. And then, yeah, slowly but surely made my way into a more professional role that is now came in with the opportunity of just wanting to help the masses. But it's a little bit more focused now. So I probably I look after probably around like 100 acts now, whereas before Centric has this good system where anyone can join. So from 58,000 people down to around 70. So everywhere in between I've worked with since
Have you found any use, Joel, for your philosophy degree in publishing?
I'm good at asking questions, if that helps. And I guess it's sort of like stepping out of yourself a little bit and thinking of things in potentially a more ethical way, shall we say.
Okay, great. Okay, well,
it's funny, Joel. I actually did a philosophy degree at Leeds as well, so there's obviously some connection there.
There we go.
Oh, Steve, please tell me you did a philosophy degree. No,
we just gravitate to things that begin with P. We'll say.
two out of three. That's good. Okay, that's good. So that's great. So it's great. It's great to have you on board. It's great to have like, I mean, going to be like a good introduction to it. I'm going to start with you, Steve, and the big question. Like, explain publishing in a nutshell. Like, you're the man who's been kind of like doing this the longest. So what's publishing? To explain for the people who are watching now and watching a video in the future.
Okay, it's basically it's a service for songwriters. So that entails registering their songs and their shares of their songs. It entails delivering them royalty statements to once you've collected all the money, you've got to then deliver it to the writers. So those are the two. Song registration, once you register the songs, the system works, you collect the money and you deliver that back to them via a royalty statement. So that's kind of the basic sort of element. And then I suppose over and above that are creative services, which is the world of synchronization. So trying to, in a publishing deal, they have a thing called exploitation of works. And that is exploitation in a positive way. It's
a horrible word. It's a real horrible. It's one of those horrible words. It is. It gives you the ick, you know.
It does, but it's an exploitation in a positive way in that you try and find more work for the songs, whether that's getting them on on a Netflix program or a BBC program or in a movie and an advert on an online game, whatever it is. Our job is to try and generate more opportunities for the songs and the songwriters. And then I suppose the last element really is the sort of artist development, writer development, A&R process. So there's a lot of stuff that actually happens. I mean, I think even now, like publishing still seems it's emerged a lot in the last sort of 15, 20 years, but it still seems still a little bit smoke and mirrors. Everyone kind of knows what a record label does,
Yeah.
but a lot of the stuff that actually happens behind the scenes, publishers do. They're the ones that organize all the co-writing sessions. They're the ones that hook up the artists with the songwriters to create the hits. They're the ones that are working with the songwriters to help support them and help find opportunities for them to collaborate. So there's actually a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that publishers facilitate. So I would say those are the kind of the four core areas of music publishing.
Excellent. That's publishing now in a nutshell. So that
Yeah.
we have the definition. I want to move on then. Joel, do you think like I mean, just following on from what kind of like I mean Steve said there, people seem to have a very good idea of what record labels do or don't do.
Mhm.
Why is it that artists, and particularly songwriters, sometimes don't really know about publishing? Is it that you basically kind of like I mean you lack the kind of sex appeal of record labels, or is it down to something else?
To me, I think at the heart of it is probably the education of what a publisher actually does. And I think what Steve sort of touched on was like this, it can feel like a very murky world. It can feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's like an obscene amount of acronyms that fly around that like the ability to try and like put your finger on as someone who's not within the world of publishing what a publisher is really difficult because there's a lot of jargon to it really. So obviously in Ireland, as songwriters, you may well be members of IMRO, but in the UK we have the PRS. In the US, there's BMI, there's CSAC, there's ASCAP, and every single country has these 3 to 4 letter acronyms that are doing the same jobs. And if you're trying to explain that to the layman and how being like registered with every single one of these is really important, and a publisher can do that for you to make sure you're getting paid for every play that's happening of the work that you've exploited, it is confusing. But I guess the whole point of a publisher is to try and demystify that as well and try and create that trust between you and the songwriter of there is a lot of moving parts in publishing. It's not as simple as like you get played here, therefore you're getting paid. It's a Spotify player, you'll be paid via your distributor. It's a CD sale, you'll get paid via your label. It's a also you had a track that was played in the US, so BMI have to collect that. But also there's a company called MLC that will collect that and will make sure that you're registered there and will collect it for you, and then it will come back through to you. I think that well, you said, Jim, in terms of like it isn't sexy. I don't think sort of like the pure administration of making things happen for songwriters, but I think the important thing I think to note is that it is sort of like the backbone of
Yes.
allowing you as a songwriter to facilitate your career as a songwriter. All of the good stuff of like the exploitation and getting into sessions that Steve spoke to, I know that JJ set up and can probably speak to that as well, is really important. But I think it is that knowing the basics and professionalizing yourself and getting some publishing situation sorted with you will help no end. It's not sexy, a lot of it, but it is vital for just the economics of what you're doing as a songwriter.
That's excellent. That's a really good kind of summing up of kind of like mean what exactly is involved on a day-to-day basis. Then let's move to kind of Sony Music, JJ. So when you start working with a new artist, like what do you find is kind of what do they find as to be the hardest thing? Like I mean, like obviously they're going to get their head around what it's about. They understand from what Joel's saying, like it's about administration and basically like so. Then in terms of your side, what happens when the artist is signed by an A&R person? Like what's the next step then before they end up working with you?
I mean, yeah, it's interesting because obviously there's like I said before, it's so varied when it comes to deals nowadays. Typically, when we sign, I mean, we have to sign an artist with a lawyer. So a lawyer is really a key essential part of the team, and hopefully you would think that the lawyer clues up the artist on, forming a team around them, having all the essential kind of parts that can set you on the right path. And often a publisher will come in after, not exclusively, but after the label deal is done. And from that point on, normally an artist kind of knows exactly what they need to be doing. They've got focus on the project that they're working towards, and we come in and just kind of help facilitate the writing side of stuff, and try and get them to the goal. But yeah, I mean, the first thing that we do, which is kind of what Joel was touching on there, is set them up with our score access so that they're completely aware of the admin team, copyright team, the sync team. They're introduced to everybody so that they're aware exactly what people are doing. Part of what we do as well is that we pitch songs. So we even do with our sync department sync camps, which we put our artists in specifically to write for sync. So it's really cluing up the artist about what a publisher can provide the artist for. But yeah, I mean, the first thing that we do, even before we typically sign a deal when we're interested in an artist, is just start by putting them in with sessions, and building the relationship slowly, putting them in with people who we trust, who we can think help deliver their vision. And yeah, it's a slow building of that relationship. And hopefully you start to understand what the artist is looking for. You get a feel for what they do like and what they don't like, and also get a feel for what rooms they're really strong in, what they're really capable of delivering in a room. And yeah, you just start to build kind of trust between you and the artist that you're capable of delivering them what the rooms that they would be interested in doing and that can actually be of value to them. So yeah, that's the kind of beginning start of the relationship, the inception. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's kind of go back a step or two now, Steve. And I just want to go back to kind of I suppose, JJ mentioned it there in passing, which is kind of like the deals that are done back in the day. Like, and I'm old enough to have been around when this happened. Was like if a publishing deal was something that a band got almost like as a bonus after doing a record deal. The classic way was you signed your record deal, then you decided you're going to get a publishing deal. You go for the biggest amount of money, the biggest check that was out there, be it kind of My Sweetie and My Music, or be it whoever it is, Peer Music. You took that big check. Voila, you had a publishing deal, and that was it. I'm assuming that's now, from your point of view, that's completely changed, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of changed out of all recognition. I think that what you were just describing there was the marketplace that I was operating in the 90s when I was working at Sony. I think what's interesting in there's some amazing companies like Centric and Cobalt that have come along and have kind of given songwriters, especially at the early stages, much the pitch is much wider now. There's many more solutions for artists at various different parts of their career. I think it was how you described it, Jim. What was definitely a thing, but it's kind of changed out of all recognition now. So there is a publishing. Look, I'm working with Universal Music with one of my clients at the moment, and I'm having a good time there. I'm part of the Independent Music Publishers Forum, and I went and hung out with loads of indie publishers in Parma last year, and I realized that was a really healthy game of independent publishing out there when you meet all the international people, and they're all doing good business. So there are lots of different parts of publishing now that can offer a songwriter from the very start to having massive hits. They can offer them a solution. There's a solution for everyone at every different stage of your career now. So I think there's never a better time to be a songwriter, I would say. And JJ was talking a little bit about the deals there. And having to get a lawyer and contracts, and obviously that's a big part of when you engage with a songwriter from a publishing point of view. And again, like the deals are much more transparent. They're much fairer. They're much probably shorter in terms of ownership of rights. So I actually think that from a songwriting point of view, I think it's a much better playing field now to find a solution for you. And I think the deals are probably much more favorable now to writers than they ever have been.
Okay, Joel, did like I mean, like, given kind of like what you were talking earlier on, given just what kind of like Steve was kind of said about mentioning your company in particular, I'm curious about this kind of like, I mean these bespoke deals. Obviously the job of a publishing company is to kind of like represent its songwriter clients, but it's also your job to kind of make money to keep the business afloat. And I'm just wondering,
Mhm.
like, is it the case? Has it become a volume business some way, or are you kind of a lot more picky about what you do because you know how much work's involved? You know how much work's involved making sure you get paid for those plays you had in Brazil, or get paid for those plays you had out in kind of Belgium.
I mean, I think different businesses will operate in different manners. So that what Steve spoke to just then, so like Centric and Cobalt have recently set up something called Cosign as well, where like the idea of it is that it gives the access to anybody really from the writing of a song to be able to gain publishing income and on like fairer rates. So for Centric, I mean, certainly historically, you could argue that volume was probably king. As I said at the start of this, like when I first joined, like technically speaking, I was sort of like looking after like 50,000 people, which like for a lot of publishers, like that's obscene. How on earth are you doing that? But it's because the model of Centric was built around tech as well. So you have a portal that you can log into. You can submit all of the works yourself. You're not necessarily reliant on a client manager or reliant on an A&R to be able to actually get your publishing income for you. You're sort of creating this like self-service model to allow you as a songwriter to get what you are due. And like for what Steve was saying there in terms of like different types of deal, like where Centric sort of became, I guess, a bit of a disruptor in the industry is that we set up a deal in which you can leave with 28 days notice. There's no ownership of those copyrights either. So if Steve or JJ came in and offered like a songwriter sort of like a lifetime, like not sorry, like a life-changing amount of money to be on a different type of deal, like if you want a Centric contract, like go and take it. Of course, like it's a different type of deal, but up until that point, you are collecting everything you are due and probably putting you in a position in a much stronger scenario because you actually know how much you're earning on a quarter to quarter basis as well. And I think that's a really powerful position for you as a songwriter to know because whilst like the learning of publishing is really tricky, something that speaks volumes is actually how much money am I earning now
Yeah.
in publishing? Because if I'm going to like an advanced based deal, hypothetically, let's say someone puts £100,000 on the table for a 10-year ownership deal, but you are working with a Centric or a Cobalt, it's like, well, actually, I'm making £10,000 a year just without any sort of ownership. Like, why do I need to take the money when I'm not actually going to make any more money on top of that as well? So it's kind of getting to this scenario now, which I think is really strong for songwriters, especially where you can get to a position of a couple of things. If I don't need the money, why take it? But also putting you in a bargaining position with majors and heavy indies of like, what are you bringing to the table that's actually going to
Yeah.
develop me further into my career? So what Centric doesn't do as much as say Sony do is like putting people in sync writing camps, or we're not necessarily putting people in rooms, but if you are creating yourself and you have a strong team around you, or you're confident in your own ability to do it yourself, you have the ability to do that now, probably more so than ever before. Um, so I mean, as you say, I
What you
think it's
what
a
you
really
what you what you're describing in many ways, Joel, is
Mm.
you're describing a DIY setup. You're describing a situation.
Yeah,
You're providing a service like a kind of an AWOL or something like that, a service for songwriters. You've already done it. It's part of a DIY element.
yeah, exactly that. But I think it's one of those things where like I think it's really important to state that there are still real needs for the Sony's, EMIs, like for majors to do what they do as well, to sort of like put the boosters onto people. And if there's really strong songwriting talent that they can sort of help out with in writing rooms and getting different people around them to help develop the talent, that's a really important part
Yes.
of the industry as well. But if you're wanting to do things DIY and represent yourself and look after yourself, then you have the ability to do that now and get paid for it. Whereas prior, probably not so much the
Okay, great.
case. It's kind of democratizing, I guess, publishing a little bit more, which is a really strong position for all songwriters to be in.
Okay, that's really good. So, and you use the expression that JJ used this expression 2 or 3 times. And stuff. I have to get back to this expression, and you use it just there as well, like Joel. And this expression JJ is putting the songwriters in the room, right? Talk to me a little bit about this because, like, I know about songwriting camps, but I'm kind of wondering, like, I mean, when you say put someone in a room, are you talking with someone who's going in, collaborating with different songwriters on a big album project? And in that case, like, isn't there kind of like a psychology vibe as well? Because a lot of songwriters would be used just working on their own, so that's a real move up the ladder as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of our job is making sure that songwriters, not only because, as opposed to a label that sees, you as an artist and a publisher that sees you as a songwriter, we really want to empower you to not just be writing for your own stuff, but for other people as well. And I think, typically a lot of the time that, we find an artist who we love, we can see the value in their songwriting kind of on a more wider scale than just their own artist project. So yeah, I mean, again, I work with a lot of artists who will go into like a writing phase where they're looking to do an album. So they'll come to us and they'll say, "Look, we've got an idea for the next album. I might want to be doing a trip out to Nashville or LA. Can we get some people who you think will be really great and who can kind of help form this idea?" And yeah, again, part of our job is making sure, or part of my job is coordinating not only within our team, but within, the teams globally. We have over 38 offices across the globe. So really, we have access to so many songwriters of so many different cultures and kind of places that can influence your music. Really, if you're looking for certain sounds or certain ideas, we have access to the kind of stuff that you want to be looking for. So when it comes to an artist writing for a project, we'll strategize and we'll say, look, we really think these guys would be amazing for you. They can help bring this sound or the kind of playful lyricism that you're looking for. And yeah, I mean, we really encourage our songwriters to be as collaborative as possible. Obviously, some of our songwriters, are a little bit more self-contained, but that then we'll introduce them to producers and other collaborators and multi-instrumentalists. So it really is a very collaborative thing, and I think as Steve and Joel might be able to say, you'll find that most people who love writing music will always want to write music, whether that's for themselves or for other people. So typically, it's not very difficult to try and inspire a collaboration. And then we have artists who, like I say, because they love writing music, they'll be like, I've wrapped my project. I'm looking to just write for other people. And so
Yeah.
in that case, we'll start, putting out the feelers. We'll say, we've got an artist here. He would love to write for other people. Can we get some sessions together? So we'll, put together a session list of people we want to target in the UK, in LA, Nashville, Sweden, Korea sometimes. And yeah, and then we'll work out who makes sense for that, who we can kind of target. And yeah, essentially put those two together in a room in a studio, and hopefully, more times often than not, you get an amazing piece of music come out of it.
Okay, Steve. Like, I mean, what JJ's talking about there is kind of, I mean, developing an artist after they've signed the company. Like, I mean, Joel's talking very much about administering stuff. People coming on board who've already got, I suppose, a bit of a track record. If they're kind of bringing in £10,000 a year in revenue in royalties. I want to kind of go back to the start. Like, what are you looking for when you and saying Johnny had decided you're looking for artists for your songwriters for your new publishing venture? What are you looking for? Like, I mean, are you look for people who've kind of like, is there a confidence to them? Is it kind of like someone who's can take, is happy to collaborate, or is it just someone who's already got writing really really good songs, and that's the one thing that kind of matters?
Well, I suppose there's
And also, sorry as well, Steve, how important is it for you to have the songwriter already has a team around them in terms of management?
okay, sure. Okay, so
Uh,
there's a few
lawyer.
things going on there. So I think there's two kinds of writers. There's a performing songwriter, which is an artist, or a non-performing songwriter, which is a backroom person that operates in studios and isn't going to perform the song. The song is for someone else, so they're just a writer rather than an artist. They can be the same. They can do both, but in a writing session, they're not anticipating being the person that's going to sing the song. They're doing it for another artist. So I think it's important to have that sort of explain that there's performing songwriters and non-performing songwriters. I think it's important to sort of do that. So with artists, what I look for, artists that I publish over the years, what I look for is because not every artist can write songs. Not, I mean, that's there's quite a few artists that have had great careers by collaborating or doing covers. So that, which is absolutely fine and legit. So for me, like the thing that I always just look for is songs and stars. So the front person has to have something about them that stands out to me and has to sort of really pop, live, has to really have something going on, and they have to be able to write a song. So and finding those people is quite hard. I always think that's quite a tough one to find those people, but that's what I really personally, I love a band, and so finding the songwriter that is usually the singer in a band, and they have some star quality about them, is definitely that thing for me. On a non-performing songwriter, I think that's a really interesting area, and I think what's really interesting with that, I think JJ touched on it. There's certain characters that are going to write songs, whether they're signed, not signed, whether whether they're in a band, not in a band. It's just it's like a calling. They just have to do it. It's like, I don't know, for their mental health or whatever reason it is. They are creative souls and they have to write. And I think with the non-performing songwriters, with the people that come into sessions and help big pop stars, have their hits. I think those people are really interesting. I find that the ones I find that are probably the most interesting ones are the ones that are probably have had some sort of career as an artist, and then probably have hit their late 20s, early 30s, where they're starting to realize that they're writing more songs than they're allowed to release albums for, and then they start looking outside. Or sometimes they've had a career that's done okay, but then they've been dropped or it hasn't quite worked out, and then they discover that they're still writing songs, and then they start working with other people. That happens quite a lot. I think that there's in terms of looking for stuff, to be honest, Jim, the key thing is always the tunes. It's the music. It's like, if something's speaking to you, if you listen to a song and that you hear through your network, or however you come across a writer or an artist, it's whether you think that song is great, and then if they've got any more, and then getting to know them and developing that relationship. So going back to your second question about having a team, I think I've signed stuff that hasn't had teams around it, and they've developed teams as things have happened, and I've maybe made a few introductions to various members of the team along the way. I think the thing, though I'm going against all of my own advice with my little publishing company, um, I think having a decent manager is really important. Like, I think that, like, if you've got a really good manager that is on board as a manager for you as a writer, or for you as an artist, then, like, I can have like those really crunchy business conversations with the manager, and I can leave my relationship with the writer or the artist, talking about creative stuff and the songs and the gigs and the next session or whatever it is we're doing. And I think it's really great to have that. Also, if you've got a manager, you can collaborate with you're part of the team, and there's two people pulling the train, at that point. And then when you get a record label on board and a booking agent on board, then suddenly you're part of a team. One of my artists I've got that published at the moment doesn't have a manager, but they have a really cool record label, and they've got a really excellent booking agent. And I've come in as just signed the publishing, and I've set up a meeting for the first time where we're all going to speak together online and actually strategize for the next album in the absence of a manager. I think what's interesting as a publisher, one thing I've learned as a publisher, you can actually, especially in my role as A&R, you can sort of look at where the gaps are, and you can kind of move into them and fill them a bit, sometimes temporarily, sometimes more long term, or sometimes it's just around projects. So having a team is really important. Having a decent manager is really important. Like I worked at 13 artists and they won't pick up anything without a manager, basically, without a manager with a bit of track record. And I think there's a lot of people out there that won't touch something. Or what I see quite often is there's a band's bubbling away. They pick up a manager and then suddenly they're hot because they've got the manager. They were buzzy beforehand, but they pick up a manager and then suddenly everyone wants to talk to them. So I think that my best advice is absolutely try and get a manager as early as possible. A good one.
Yeah, okay, great, excellent. All right, so then moving from kind of, from your outlook, moving to you then, Joel. Like in terms of kind of how you operate, am I right in thinking that it isn't necessarily important from your point of view that the songwriter you're working with has a team around them because of the way you're operating, it's much more kind of a plug and play.
Very much so. I think that the thing that I would say is really important to know for anything that's sort of like a self-service model is like understanding sort of like the rates and what they're doing for you and whether it's the right time and worth it as well. And this is the same across anybody that you're working across within the industry, for managers to distributors to labels. It's all about like what's the percentage, what are they taking and what are they bringing to the table. So the way that I saw like Centric functions is like it's a 80-20 split on any royalties that you're making. And obviously that would include from your local PRO as well. So if you're in Ireland and the vast majority of your income, over 80% of it, and that's your listenership, is from Ireland, having a publishing administrator, it might not be the right time at that point because IMRO are doing all the collection for you. The most of it's from Ireland, and you'll be taking a hit from the 20% that Centric will take. So for like the Centric's models, like if you're writing a song and you've got in some level of international play, and obviously like streaming has sort of allowed that to take that far better now as well. Like you have the ability for your music to be played anywhere and everywhere. That's probably the time to start using a service like that. I think part of it is again this sort of education side of things and so the opportunities that you have that are only available based on having publishing as well, or like a correct setup. So thinking back to the world of sync, which JJ and Steve have spoke on, quite a lot of countries work off this thing which is called like a blanket license model. So the way that that works is that you as a songwriter have to have your works registered at your local PRO, the local mechanical society, and also with a thing called like the PPL or equivalent, dependent on the country that you're on. You will only get your music played on TV if you are registered at those three places. And a publisher is one of those people that can sort of help facilitate that for you. So it may be the case that if you're sort of like having a bit of a buzz in Ireland and TV stations like saying, hey, or TV production companies like, hey, we really want to use you on like one of your songs on the next series of whatever it is, a publisher can facilitate that for you really quickly because you've kind of got the background admin sorted. It's also worth noting that there is just so much music in the world and so much similarity of music out in the world as well that if your music isn't registered correctly, the music supervisor will probably just move on to the next song that sounds in a similar world as well. It's very fickle, that side of things. So like my main thing is like it's almost like the professionalize yourself to allow the other opportunities to come along as well. So like what Steve has spoke to in terms of like getting a good manager helps along the way with that as well. If you don't have a manager who is your booking agent, if you don't have any of those, are all of your publishing registrations correct? Is everything sort of set up metadata wise for you to be able to actually get the most out of what you're doing as well? So where a publisher like Centric or Cosign or TuneCore has a publishing arm as well, it's like the getting your ducks in a row as a songwriter is something which is a really important thing to go ahead and do because you're giving yourself opportunities that you may not have realized that you had without it.
Okay, just kind of like I suppose to give people an idea as well, Joel. Like, I mean, in terms of artists who work with you, who are the bigger artists? I don't want the numbers, but just give me the actual figures they're earning. But like, who are the big artists who are like, using your model? Because it strikes me that like, I mean, it is a pretty disruptive model what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Artist is kind of maybe 5-10 years down the road, and they get their rights back.
Sugar Babes, the Angela Havas, Circa Waves, SL. I mean, but it goes like the reverse of that as well. When I said like, if you don't need the money, don't take it up until something's life changing. At the start of their careers, we had Bastille, Lewis Capaldi, Little Sims, Blossoms, up until recently, Sleep Token, who are now the biggest metal band on the planet as well. So it's getting to that stage where it's like if you've got a good team around you, again, it sort of like asks it allows you to ask more questions of what you want a publisher to do for you as well. Um, so yeah, we last year Sansusi, who is with us, she won an Ivor. Sorry, they won a Ivor Novello for best contemporary song. They were on the 28-day model at that time as well. So it is there as a it is admittedly it is there to disrupt, but it's there to give options where there probably wasn't prior. So it's
Have we lost Joel? Hello, Joel. Hello. Can anyone hear me? Are you hearing me okay? It's Joel lost, is it? Joel, can you hear me? Oh, is Joel gone? Joel's gone. Okay, so hopefully he'll dial back in. So my next question was I was just kind of is he back in? He is back in. Hi, Joel, you're back.
I have no idea where I was mid-flow then. Loads of people,
But no, yeah,
loads of
yeah.
people use
It
this.
was leading me on to my next question, which is like,
Yeah.
one thing you've all kind of made incredibly plain is that, like, I mean, the industry, which was maybe once being regarded as being pink in an aspect with very little changes, has completely kind of changed. I'm curious, and starting with you, JJ, like, going around the houses now, all three, like, what are the big kind of like new trends you've seen? You know what I mean? Is AI suddenly something, or is it something that kind of like a whack-a-mole you don't want to talk about? Are there other trends kind of like in terms of what artists expect from their publishers? Are there things happening with sub-publishing that people should be more clued in about?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to look at like trends or fads as, what's going to actually stick around and what's going to be like impactful in the industry. I do think, unfortunately, AI is now so prevalent and is actually so commanding. I mean, I think I saw something the other day where it was something like there's more AI content now being like put out than human content at the moment, which is, it's a terrifying statistic and also, truly, truly terrifying for smaller unsigned artists who now not only have to compete with people who are already signed, established, but also these AI bots which are doing huge streams. So it's definitely a very scary time, and I think it's really important that companies such as Sony and some of the bigger companies take a stance on it, and that's something that we're working towards at the moment. But yeah, it's something I know that like Suno, it plays a massive role in music creation at the moment, and I think it's not so much a trend that something is just going to, go away forever. It's about working out how we can work with this technology in a sustainable and also an ethically responsible way, both to songwriters and to listeners. So yeah,
But isn't
it's working
there a
out.
case we made as well regarding AI that, like, on one hand it can help people in some ways augment their creativity, but in other ways, like, I mean, you're going to get an awful lot of AI slop, which is basically just regurgitating previously copyrighted material. So basically,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
would the publisher bother hoop getting involved in giving a deal to something that's already under copyright elsewhere?
Oh no, no. I mean, I don't know. I won't speak to the official stance of Sony. I'm not
Yeah,
clued
yeah.
in, unfortunately, on it. But I know that there's a very, very strict policy about, Suno, for example, using copyrighted material and the AI model being able to type in something like, "Oh, can we use like let's say a Bastille reference to like make a song like this?" They managed to say you can't use like copyrighted names like proper names, but you can work around that now and use the correct kind of like inputs to basically you still use copyright material without having to like just like blatantly say these names. So there's definitely a case, especially for publishers. There was a big thing with Georgia Smith where her vocals were kind of copied for a track, and we had a very strong stance on that because it's completely it's just a rip and an infringement on her and her ability to write songs and her tonality and lyricism. So yeah, it's more I think about if you view it, I play the piano and a lot of my friends who produce I think never really had the access when they were producing to be able to, create chords and really understand how to use it. But after, going on to Logic and using plugins, they have this suddenly an ability to kind of create music which sounds like a live piano. So if we can use AI in that sense and try and work out how you can use it more as a tool to facilitate songwriting as opposed to the creation of songwriting, I think that's really where we should be going with this and help it to basically just contain it and really get a hold on it and you make sure that because the way that it's going right now, if it's not properly regulated, it's gonna take over and saturate everything, and everything will be AI slop, and it's just there has to be a stop to it at some point.
Okay, great stuff. And Steve, same question to you in terms of trends. Me and Jay was making a very good, made a very good point there, and a very good kind of like case around AI. What are the other trends you've seen kind of emerging? Especially kind of like I suppose from are we going to see more artists who've got successful careers deciding to go down the centric model? Is that going to be one way? Can we see more of that, or are you kind of seeing a fact that like a lot of artists are kind of happy to set up their own little publishing companies and run things via a management team or administration team?
Well, like I said for one of the previous questions, there are so many more options now, and there are different options at like different stages of your career. I think that's probably now I've been around a bit. um, I can see that some things that are a great fit at your beginning of your career might not necessarily be a great fit in the middle or coming towards the end. So one of the things that I think's really healthy is when copyrights revert and when artists can start owning and administrating their own copyrights or having their own setups to do that, or can get their rights back and do an admin deal with someone like me or someone like Joel, and you can enable them to have ownership of their rights for the first time in their career, and for them to get a much better percentage on that. So I think all those things are sort of super relevant. It's like that there are different stages of career and there's different solutions and different deals to be done at different stages. And I think that's one thing that I've really learned as time's gone on. I think the one thing I would like to say, but I don't know if it's a trend but for me it's a real thing because it's really taking up a lot of my time at the moment, is the amount of metadata needed in order to properly collect songs now and to collect all that information from a publisher that publisher needs. So I'm onboarding a catalog at the moment, and it's like so when I first started in A&R back in the 90s, I just needed like the song title, the artist name, and the four songwriters shares. That was kind of it. Now I need the ISRC code, which is the code affiliated with the recording, because publishers now use that to collect digital royalties and identify tracks to triangulate royalty claims on tracks. So having an ISRC code is really important. Having what's called the IPI or CA number of any other writers and external writers in your project. So now you need not only do I need the name of the writer, I also need their PRO, the Performing Rights Organization. I need their CAE or IPI number as well. All this information now, because there's so many tracks being released and the digital market is so kind of fast moving, fast paced, that you need to collect all of this information, and you need to deliver that to the performing rights organizations and whoever's doing your administration in order to really make sure that you're collecting everything. Also, the other thing that I've sort of coming across more and more is that lyrics, before, your lyrics were only really on an album cover or maybe on a songbook if you're lucky enough to be, to have a songbook created of your work. But now like lyrics are appearing all over the place on the internet, obviously on Spotify and all the DSPs, they're there in various places, and they all have to be managed and licensed, and that's turning into sort of quite a big job for publishers as well. And there's some really cool companies like Music's Match out there that can manage lyrics
Yeah.
on your behalf. So I would say for me, like one of the biggest changes is the amount of information I have to collect off the back of one song or one collaboration or one songwriting camp or whatever. The amount of information we need to collect as publishers and we need to store and register and use to efficiently collect the money in for the songs has grown exponentially.
It's very interesting you say that because I mean, when we've had sync panels before, they often say like one of the most important things for an artist or a songwriter is to have all the information together. I think that's the first time someone's actually outlined the kind of information. And is this
Yes.
information universal, as in, or do different kind of like mean companies look for different scalps of that information?
No, I think, like I said, I've been involved in setting my own operation. I'm consulting for someone else at the moment, and I think that that's, you know, I've done a lot of research, and I think it's like 2026. This is the level of information you need to collect in order to be an effective publisher.
Wow. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Joel, same question to you in terms of kind of main trends or fans or kind of like changes you've noticed in the last while.
I mean, I would probably just going to bunny hop on what Steve has just said, to be honest. I think data is king really now in the world of music publishing. I think to sort of speak back to the convoluted nature of what music publishing is that we also spoke about at the beginning, the more data that you can give your publisher or your PRO, the more effective of a job they will do because there's just so many sources of income out there now to collect than there ever was before. And to make sure that that's done accurately and mapped correctly is one of the most important things you can do. I think one of the things that is certainly a trend is like quite a lot of societies are making quite a bit of a song and dance about how much money is unclaimed for songwriters as
Yeah.
well. So there's the Digital Mechanical Society in the USA is a company called the MLC. So what they will do is they will collect mechanical royalties for your streaming for any usage that happens in the US, and they are sitting on millions of pounds, which is there to collect for any income that for any stream that's sort of like happened out in the US for you as a songwriter. But to be able to get that and to be able to unlock it at the MLC, everything that Steve has just spoken to is vital for that because they map everything off ISRCs, off matching songwriter names, off matching IPI names. If these things do not match, then it will not be sent out and it will sit there up until things sort of like match the data correctly. So I think like the trend that you'll probably start to see as songwriters is what I would like to see anyway is sort of like more efficient data gathering from the moment that you have written a song in session is something that I don't know what happens in the sessions that you sort of set up, JJ, but ones that we've sort of done in the past, it's like before you leave that room, you are giving us the information of songwriter name, your IPI name, your IPI affiliation. Are you with a label? Who's the label? Because once we know the label, we can then get the ISRC off them and make sure everything is registered properly for you. It's like the trend in publishing at the moment is probably like some of like again, sort of like going back to something you were saying earlier, Jim, it's like the unsexy part of it because it's the unsexy part that gets you actually every bit of money that you should be getting. And all of the creative side of things is kind of superfluous if you don't have that information. Because if you're going away from a session and you have written a work, but someone doesn't have an IPI number or the splits haven't been agreed upon from that moment, if you're trying to then recover that income or you send that information over to the publisher, like, well, we're not going to be doing the job that we want for you here. So another trend which is probably going to take place, and probably still is the case at the moment, is like the relationship between publisher and songwriter, I think, will become stronger because the conversations that you have to be able to get everything you need to be able to do the job as a publisher and as a songwriter is more vital than probably it has been ever before.
Well, we've talked for 58 minutes, lads. So we I think, and there's no questions. There's one or two questions in, but by and large, the main question is it okay if we share your emails in the chat?
Yeah, all
Yep,
good.
that's okay with the lads. So that's been done by Angela. Thank you very much. And just a question here. I think that Joel, I'll probably give this to you. What are your stance on self-publishing options like DistroKid?
I mean, like for me, it's like anything that sort of democratizes how music works and gives better sort of like options and deals for songwriters is a positive. To be honest, like I think the thing to always be careful of is always check what's actually the contract that you're signing up for, because I think if you're doing like a DistroKid option or a Centric option or a cosign option, it's quite often T's and C's, which you sort of scroll through and click, and it's like you probably haven't actually read what you've signed up to quite a lot of the time. I think that's a really important thing to become aware of, because if down the line, if like other deals or options come in for you and you've accidentally signed yourself up on like a 1 year term, that's something that you really need to be in the know of. We as a society have short attentions and scroll through T's and C's like no one's business. But if you're signing up for something which has an effect on anything that is going to be of like the financial impact for you as a songwriter, read it.
Okay.
Read it.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to say thank you very much to the three of you. We're taking an hour of your time. That's been super valuable. There's a lot of information in there. I've learned a lot tonight, and like as an old man learning a lot is always a good sign. So again, thank you so much to Steve, to Joel, and to JJ. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you
No
so much
worries.
for having us.
Cheers,
See you.
everyone. Take it
Bye-bye.
easy.
Bye, guys.